me? If you can hear me, say hook 'em horn.
Hook 'em horn!
I'm Ronnie Paul. I'm Dr. Paul's oldest son. Y'all know my dad's been a little busy lately and he doesn't always remember all of us. So they volunteered me to introduce the family members that are here tonight. So, obviously the most important person here is my mother. And she has had a real job in her life. I'm the oldest of 5 children, and with me tonight I have my wife, Peggy. My oldest daughter, Laura, and her husband, Kent. I have 3 daughters. Laura got married in December. This is the first one. I have my youngest daughter, Linda. Y'all seen her around traveling with my dad and helping out with my mother, so she's been on the trail all over. And then I have my sister, who is technically younger than me, but we kind of argue about who's really older, Lori. They're not on stage, but she has a number of her in-laws and cousins and aunts and uncles that are here also from this area. I think there was a great aunt's nephew's brother-in-law that was here too. I don't remember all their names. But we do have, I am the oldest of 5, the other 3 are not. My oldest daughter graduated from the University of Texas. I won't tell you where the rest of the family went to school. But you didn't come to hear me. Right now, I'm going to have Caitlin come up. She's the youth organizer here and has put together a great program. And I think she got a pretty good speaker for y'all tonight. So here's Caitlin.
There are a lot of you guys. Supposed to get a stadium, DK Royal Stadium, or if we should get, like a tiny classroom. But I think that, this is good. But so 4 years ago, I had no idea who Ron Paul was. Unfortunately, I was walking along Stalker one day and I saw a Ron Paul Revolution table, and I didn't know how to feel about it because I knew that I hated politicians, but I couldn't tell if it was Republican or Democrat. So I didn't know how I was supposed to hate it. But I figured out who Ron Paul was, and now I'm involved in politics and I'm not apathetic anymore. And there's nothing I'd rather be doing with my time. And so all wars. I mean, I think that that's amazing that we have someone who's polling so well in an actual race. And no matter what anybody says, the numbers don't lie. Just look around you and you'll understand why the man that I'm about to bring on the stage is a phenomenon. Everybody, welcome to your favorite, awesome, presidential candidate, Dr. Ron Paul.
great day today. It's a great time to continue with our revolution. Captain indicated that we're somewhat different than some of the other politicians, and if somebody would come from
legalize this raw milk. There we go. And also, how many other candidates are getting the chance in the Fed? Those are nice slogans, but the real issue is our liberty, and we're bound and determined to get our liberties back again. And it is rather discouraging. In Washington, not much seems to be happening, but where the real encouragement is when you leave Washington, come out, get on the campaign trail, and meet people like you. That uplifts me, and thank you very much for being with us. So often, why do young people seem to be interested? Well, why shouldn't young people be interested in their own freedom? One thing that's happened in the last 4 years is it's not so much that people have completely given up on the idea that the government's supposed to take care of everybody else. I don't know where they're going to get everything if everybody's being taken care of by somebody else. But I think what's happened in the last 4 years, a lot of people woke up and realized that it doesn't work anymore. How long can a housing bubble last? Eventually it burst and the people who were supposed to help lose their houses. So people have awakened and said, look, this system isn't working very well. This monetary system doesn't work. This entitlement system enriches the rich and not the poor. And also, we have a foreign policy that is deeply flawed, and most people in this country now, by large majority, says it's time to come home. There we go. Throw that a little bit better. No, there is no doubt that there are changes coming, and there's a big difference in these last 4 years. But Washington is always the last ones to wake up. You know, where I go, we get the large crowds, and they're very concerned, of course, about the attack on personal liberty. If you mention just the National Defense Authorization Act, most people know exactly what I'm talking about. And then, of course, we've been talking a lot about the bill that they want to use to regulate the Internet. The CISPA is the bill we're Now, we were able to stop, the Stop Online Piracy Act because people rallied. But guess what? The bad news is our noise and our voices weren't quite loud enough because they went in the House today and overwhelmingly passed that new bill called CISPA. Which means that that's just one more bill we're going to have to repeal whenever we get along with the Patriot Act, of course. Of course, the National Defense Authorization Act, that's an atrocious piece of legislation. That's the one that legalizes, with concurrence with the Congress, for the U.S. military to arrest American citizens that are only suspects and put them arrested by the military and put them in prison and no attorney authorized in secrecy. That bill should be very high on the list for repeal as well. Weeks ago, the president renewed a bill called the Defense Production Act, which is it's sitting around for a long time, and it means that in a time of national emergency or war going on, the president has the authority, of course, to declare, a total ownership of all businesses and all financial institutions. What the president did by executive order, he added the phrase during peacetime as well.
Impeach him! Impeach! Impeach him!
The land, well, not technically. If we had the good court system, it would be unconstitutional. How can the president legislate like that? Only the Congress can legislate. And I am of the firm conviction that a constitutional president, if in charge, even though the executive orders would be very limited to those functions which were expressly authorized by the Constitution, I am convinced that it would be proper to be a constitutional president to use the executive order to repeal all other illegal executive So we have a long way to go. The attack on civil liberties has been rather severe because it is the principle of liberty you have to deal with. So if you're dealing with your personal lives and how you want to run your life, your ownership of your own lives, as well as your economic liberty and the foreign policy and monetary policy, it really boils down to the principle of what Jefferson started off with. Our inalienable rights, our rights to our life and our liberty and the right to pursue our happiness is being God-given, given to us not by our government, but by our Creator. So under those circumstances, of course, the founders made a very serious attempt to try to prevent us from drifting back into tyranny. A good document, probably one of the best, but the last 100 years, we as American citizens have been very careless. But that's what this revolution is all about, is to revive the true spirit of liberty and reverse the trends of the past 100 years, change our foreign policy, change our monetary policy, and change the spending habits and the deficits that have run us into this horrendous financial crisis.
Yeah!
This can be done simply by sending only people to Washington who are certified and capable of reading the Constitution.
Yeah!
And that you believe them when they take the oath of office. Because we got in this trouble because of the careless interpretation of the Constitution, the Interstate Commerce Clause, the General Welfare Clause, the not reading and caring about Article 1, Section 8, not caring about the 9th and 10th Amendment. It wouldn't be that difficult. We don't have to invent anything new. We just need men and women of integrity that will take their oath of office seriously. If we got into this mess by not following the law book, all we need is to follow the law book. Follow the Constitution. We'll get out of this mess. Since World War II, we have been in numerous wars, almost constant wars. Not one single war has been declared so why don't we follow the law and say that the people, through their representatives in Congress, are the only ones who are allowed to declare war? And if we had that provision, had that been followed, we would have fought no wars since World War II. Think how much wealthier this country would be. How much less death and destruction we would have. Even if you took just the past 10 years, our national debt has been pushed up $4 trillion because of all the wars going on in the Middle East. And what are the politicians talking about today? Democrats and Republicans. They're overly anxious to start the next one, going to Syria, going to Iran. I say, no more wars. It's a moral issue, it's a constitutional issue, but you know, it's also an economic issue because great empires, great nations always seem to overextend themselves. Fortunately, we didn't have to have a nuclear exchange with the Soviets. They went broke before we did, and they had to go home and their system.
At least go in intervals, right?
I was in the military in the 1960s for 5 years. I was drafted during the Cuban
And then he puts it
Missile
right back up.
And believe me, if we can stand up to the Soviets who had 30,000 nuclear weapons, don't you think we could stand up and not be intimidated and act so frightened by a country that has no nuclear weapons and maybe will never get a nuclear weapon, and we want to go to war against a country like that? It makes no sense at all. Founders of this country were very definite on how we should deal with other nations. We should be friends and trade with all nations willing to be friends and willing to trade, and we would be less likely to fight with them.
Yeah!
My suggestion would be, the Cold War is over, why don't we talk and trade with Cuba?
Yeah! I need a cigar!
We're doing it with China now, and they've sort of wised up over the whole thing. We're in debt. We owe it to China. China saves their money. We're over there wasting lives and wasting money throughout the Middle East and Africa. Guess what? China's taking our dollars that they earn from us. They're investing them over there in minerals and natural resources and oil. So I would say that it would be a much better way. How about the old-fashioned capital way of being a productive nation and let people invest freely and cooperatively rather than assuming a mercantilistic attitude that we have to go over and invade countries to protect our oil? Makes no sense. The civil liberties, for various reasons, have been attacked. The attack has been much worse since 9/11, mainly, I believe, because of the erroneous analysis of 9/11. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. We didn't need to invade Iraq. The Act has been floating around Washington for a long time. They've tried to pass it. They never could get a consensus. But it was the very first bill they pushed right after 9/11 weeks. It was passed. If they had called that bill Repeal the Fourth Amendment Act, maybe it wouldn't have been passed so easily. So when we repeal that bill, we won't call it Repeal the Patriot Act. We're going to say Restore the Fourth Amendment Act.
Yeah!
Unfortunately, we have not taken the advice of the founders nor looked at our Constitution, because in a republic, the government is supposed to be open. The people are supposed to have their privacy. The government is supposed to, if anything, protect our privacy. Today, as the legislation continues to be passed, and they're attacking now the internet, it seems like they don't care about our privacy, and we can't find out what's going on in the government. That, of course, is the real reason why we need to know a lot more about the Federal Reserve System.
In the face!
I agree. That's a very good idea. Let's do that. I think next year would be a grand year. 100 years old.
Yeah!
And the people who get all the benefits, the military-industrial complex, the banks, the big corporations, the people who get the money, the people overseas who get the money and get the bailouts. I said, no, we can't do that. But what about the people who suffer the consequences? What about the people who didn't get the bailouts? What about that? The middle class suffers the most when you destroy a currency, whether it's ongoing in this country, whether it was in Mexico in the past, or Central America, or Zimbabwe, or Germany. It's the middle class that suffers the consequences. The natural consequence of destruction of currency means there's a transfer of wealth from the middle class and the poor to the wealthy. So this is what's going on. This is why there is anger. This is why they don't even pretend to balance the budget, why they don't even bring up budget resolutions, because they don't have an answer and there's no money in the Treasury. That is the reason. So what we have to deal with is, where does wealth come from? Does it come from the government? No, the government gets in the way. The wealth comes from productive individuals when they have the ability to produce and get the government out of the way, and you can be rewarded for your effort. Runaway entitlement.
Maybe they're gonna fight over it.
You could not have the wealth. You could not have the war fought if you didn't inflate and destroy the currency. So these are events that are coming about. We have not ever talked about it before in a presidential campaign. And the issue is big government or individual liberty. And it is the issue of liberty that can bring us together. Not so much that we would agree on how to use our liberty, but precisely because people are different. People want to use their liberties in different ways, but it is not confrontational if we all get together and say, we want to be free people, we want to run our lives as we choose, our lifestyle should be our own decision, our money that we earn should be our own, and the government should set out. Freedom today, most people understand, is we have the freedom of picking our own religion, and there's many different religions, and we can pick no religion if we don't want to, and we don't feel intimidated, and we don't have to endorse what people do and pick. Same way with our intellectual liberties. We're allowed to read the books we want, even very dangerous philosophies that can do damage to us. We're allowed to read and study. But why is it? Why is it if we protect intellectual and religious liberty, why can't we protect the liberty of you to put in me your... When we were having a vote on the House floor once on this subject, they were voting to take away more of your personal liberties, and I asked a member sitting next to me, why are you doing that? He says, the people are too stupid. They don't know how to take care of themselves. Tell you what, if we ever go and accept as fully this notion that the government can protect us against ourselves, there is no liberty left. This is the reason it has to be up to the individual. Does that mean that each and every one of us will make the right decision? No. Some people are going to make mistakes, but you have to assume responsibility for those mistakes. But what happens if you defer? What happens if you defer to the politician and the bureaucrats? They make a mistake. We all suffer the consequence. That if you legalize freedom, that you endorse what people do, and that's absolutely not the truth. Because people will use things differently and do things in different manners. The idea is that we as individuals make all our own decisions. We should decide what we smoke, drink, or whatever we do. For me, David has a position and knowledgeable enough to know that there are some benefits from raw milk. That isn't the issue for me as a politician. The issue, should you not have the right to make your own decision if you want to drink raw milk? Now, others say, well, that's okay to a point, but we have to make sure that nobody ever uses any drugs. I says, you mean alcohol? Oh, no, we don't mean that. We're talking about those illegal bad things. And then I said, well, guess where most of the addiction is? Is it on the illegal drugs? No, most of the addiction is on the prescription drugs. That's where the drugs and making our own decisions is risky. There are some dangers to that. But the greatest danger in the war on drugs has been the war on drugs. Much more dangerous than the drugs themselves. Rather recent, just since the 1937 or 38, they had the first laws against marijuana. So they, even through World War II, we were coaxing and asking people to raise hemp, and the founders all had hemp farms. If you go out and start raising hemp and making industrial hemp, they say, oh no, you can't do that because it sort of looks like marijuana. So we'll chase all those jobs up to Canada, and we can buy the products from Canada because they can raise hemp. But this is the absurdity of it all. And what we have to think about is restoration of personal responsibility and personal decision making, and that's what freedom is all about. But it brings if you're going to have some regulations, who should do it? Should it be a national government or should it be a local government? Well, my personal opinion where the regulation comes from, you the individual, you, your family, teaching your kids, your community, your church or whatever that teach you values, that's where the real regulation should come from. But today, there are some states now that said that sick people, it is now known, can be helped with marijuana, California and other states. So what does our president do? He's promised to lighten up on those law enforcement. He's enforcing those laws worse than ever. And it's an interesting way to bring up the issue of states' rights. Some people like to paint the notion of states' rights as being something bad. But conservatives talk about states' rights. Sometimes they follow, sometimes they don't. But liberals should understand, well, maybe it should be the state prerogative of what they should do in how this should be administered. This is essentially what happens with alcohol. The national prohibition of alcohol was a disaster. And we woke up and finally said, no, it's not that alcohol is dangerous. Matter of fact, I think most people in this country know that alcohol is many, many-fold more dangerous than marijuana.
Yeah!
Danger comes from, well, it's tremendously expensive. Our national debt was added to like $3 trillion in the last 30 years because of the drug laws. We put people in prison for life, 3 times arrested for nonviolent crimes, and they're kept for life. At the same time, lax in law enforcement when it comes to rapists and murderers. So it makes no sense. We have 5% of the world population. We have 25% of the world prisoners. And my suggestion to you is that I do not believe that the American people are that much worse than other people. I say we have way too many laws on the books. Along with the National Defense Authorization Act on January 1st, there were 40,000 new laws placed on our books. Now, I would like to be the first president to get rid of 40,000 useless laws. After the Constitutional Convention, Franklin was asked what had they given us, and his remark was, we have given you a republic if you can keep it, which is a major task, because if we don't change our way, if our revolution is not successful, we're going to lose it. But they had a high disregard for pure democracy, not the democratic process of electing leaders, but the process of letting the majority dictate against the minority. And they consider that a danger. But I think we're at that point now. We believe that if you get that 51%, they can undermine the rights of the individuals. The purpose of a republic is to protect the rights of all individuals and not to protect it. And that would be one of the rare limited functions of the federal government. But their reason that they didn't like democracy, they said eventually when you get a pure democracy, it tends to waste. And when you think about the waste in this country, because there's always those in power and can manipulate and maneuver and get the contracts and all the things that go on behind in the Federal Reserve, it wastes and it also consumes wealth. We're consuming wealth now. We're not producing wealth. We haven't had any significant new jobs in the last 10 years. And we've had 30-some million new people in this country. So we're wasting and we're consuming. And their prediction at the time was if you allow that to happen, we will self-destruct. Now, the Soviet system self-destructed. It was predictable because that type of system isn't functional. But our system isn't functional either. It's not as ruthless as communism, but in a way it's wasteful and it consumes. It's built on debt. It's built on paper money and the powerful special interests. And it's becoming known that the groups are lining up, you know, the 99 and 1, and we got to tax the rich and this sort of thing. Now, I'm not for taxing the rich if they honestly earn their living. That's okay. I'm for dealing with those individuals, and that's a large number of the very, very wealthy making the billions, because they get special treatment, either from the contracts or the special interest in the bailouts. That's a different system, and that is causing resentment, and this is the reason that we're more or less at an impasse in Washington, D.C., because there was a lot of compromise. They always argue that we have to have compromises and work together. When we were very wealthy, had money in the bank, the compromise was easy. Conservatives and liberals said, we'll vote for your package, I'll vote for your package, and they would pass endlessly spending money. But it isn't there anymore. In the last 4 years, that's why this is different. We realize the Treasury is empty, the productivity is down, and we have to do something about it. That means to produce, you can't have the government in the way. What you have to have is a clear understanding of property rights. You have to have a clear understanding of monetary policy, not fiat money, but gold and silver as legal tender. You have to have a government that will support and enforce contracts, not violate contracts on purpose. The contract is very important. So it's not like there wouldn't be regulations in a free market, but they would be tough. They talk about whether it was lack of regulation, that's why we had the financial crisis. That isn't true. We had the wrong kind of regulations that weren't working, and it would have been much easier to go through bankruptcy and punish the people who overextended themselves rather than buying the bad debt and dumping it on the American people behind the scenes. We know what we have to do. We know that what our problems are, but we have to really understand this whole issue of liberty. I am absolutely convinced that the understanding of liberty will bring us together. Because we won't be fighting over how we're going to use our liberties. Once they go on this tangent of saying that we are going to mold personal behavior and we're going to tell people how they can spend their money, it is endless. For too many years now, the founders had it together as one package, but in the last 100 years we have divided this. Some people defended civil liberties a little bit better than the others. Some people defended economic liberty a little bit better. But it's all one, but you have to understand liberty comes to you as an individual. It's important to you as an individual. You have a right to your life, to your own lifestyle, and you have to have a right to your money as well. Intellectual revolution. It has been said that probably 100 years before our own original revolution, that the ideas were being studied and understood by a minority of people. It wasn't 50, 60, 70% who understood the issues, but there was that irate, tireless minority that agitated and kept setting the brush fires of liberty in the lives of men. Reversal from what happened from 100 years ago has started 10, 20, even 30 years ago. People who have been writing about Austrian free market economics, writing about the Federal Reserve System, and writing about and trying to get people to understand why a non-interventionist foreign policy makes more sense than being the policeman of the world. Peace will bring you prosperity as well, let me tell you. In a revolution, though, you have to be high-spirited. You have to really strive for what seems to be impossible. As I described Washington, it seems like an impossible situation. But we have to strive for that. We have to strive for the ideal. Not that you think the ideal is going to be on our doorstep tomorrow, but you have to know what the ideal is. If you start and say, well, that's impossible, we can't do that, what we have to do is give them half a package. Give a half a package of our liberties away? No, you have to strive for the whole package. We also have to understand that what we do need is passion and determination, full belief, but also based on reason. We can't just say that this sounds good, we like it, we want to just do our thing and forget about it. You have to reason it out why it's good, why it's not only practical and good, but beneficial to everybody. You know, in the 1960s, they had a saying that went around, and it said that, you know, if you were 20 and you weren't a liberal, you didn't have a heart. Now, and they also said that if you were 40 and you weren't a conservative, you didn't have a brain. And what I'd like to suggest is, why can't we have a heart and a brain at the same time? We call that the spirit of the revolution. Sometimes in revolution, my own personal life in being engaged in trying to promote causes, people sometimes want to measure, well, how many laws did you get passed in Washington? Well, 95% of the people in Washington want to pass laws that increases the size of government. Why do I want to be on the list of saying how many laws I passed in Washington? So, most likely, if we are determined and our numbers keep growing and the enthusiasm there, our success will far exceed the expectations. And I already see this. I mean, just in the last 4 years, the amount of energy that we're seeing, it's just fantastic. Thomas Paine, who wrote a lot, you know, during the Revolution time, said the harder the conflict, the greater the glory of the triumph. So it is going to be difficult, but it is always glorious to have success. And we will have success. Am I saying we're going to have success? Next week, next month, August, or November, in some ways we will. We will have success. And the one thing I am absolutely convinced, that regardless of what happens next week, next month, or November, this spirit, the spirit of this revolution, is not going away. Confirms the fact that an idea whose time has come cannot be destroyed by armies or governments. It's too pervasive, and we still have tools to spread the message. I'm always delighted talking on the campuses and talking to the young people, and I realize what a future you face, and the realization that there's a lot of debt out there, there's a lot of personal debt, but just think how much could be solved for the country and you personally. We just had a sensible economy where you could get a good job. That would solve a heck of a lot of our problems. And that is achievable. It is achievable by us following through. The most important thing that we do as individuals wanting to be involved in this movement is to study and understand, because you have to have answers. If you say you want to end the Fed, yeah, we want to end the Fed, but why? Why do you want to end the Fed? And why are they ripping us off? And why is honesty with honest money a better thing? You have to have those answers. You have to also know how to explain to people that what we're talking about is a humanitarian approach. They claim because we don't want the government taking care of people, and we don't believe in free stuff, because there is no such thing as free stuff. But if we care about our fellow man, and we care about abundance, if we care about the maximum prosperity of the largest middle class, if we do, we have to say we have to defend individual liberty, free markets, and sound money. take care of our fellow man. They do the same thing with foreign policy. They come along and they don't talk about non-intervention and minding our own business. They say, oh, you guys are a bunch of isolationists. You don't want to talk to anybody. But guess what? The very people who tell us that we're the isolationists are the ones who are always looking around for another enemy to slay and put on sanctions and start another war. We're the ones who don't want to trade with Cuba. We're the ones that think that it's time to engage in the world and to talk to people and trade with people. So they will try to paint us as uncaring. But let me tell you, people who care will care about liberty. And this will never translate into an absolute majority, but I'm certain that our numbers are growing by leaps and bounds. These prairie fires of freedom are being spread, and there's nothing but good news out there, precariously so, because we don't know exactly. We may have something happen. There may be a false flag incident where some ship goes down and be used for the excuse to accelerate the next war. And we have to learn to distinguish war propaganda from the truth. And in the age of big government, in the age of tyranny, truth can be said that it is treason to be truthful. But we should not ever go wrong by telling the truth and living up to it and telling ourselves the truth. We cannot deceive ourselves and say, well, this is all going to go away. This has gone on for a long time. People warn us. But I think it's different. I think it's more serious than ever before. I think the debt crisis is the biggest thing the world has ever seen. Our debt is the biggest ever. And if we don't change, if we don't grasp hold of this and change the directions, there will be ramifications for it. Even though it will be touch and go for the reversal, the more of you there are to know and understand what liberty is all about. Why is it that we're deferring so much to the Department of Homeland Security when we have a Second Amendment? Why do we allow our courts to rule that you can be strip searched by any police officer without any reasonable cause? And don't you think it's about time we get fed up and change the rules at the airport so that we can actually... rounds of ammunition that the Department of Homeland Security just ordered. What do they need that for? So clearly the challenge is there, the difficulty is there, but it only starts with the acknowledgement that we do have problems. If we put our head in our sand and say the government's going to take care of us. The other day there was somebody interviewed me on TV and they said, well, so-and-so, why don't you give it to them because it's for free? I said, what is for free? The government has nothing for free. They have to steal it from somebody to give it to somebody else. And in the process, they undermine the productivity of the society. And that is what I think is so important, is to strive for freedom, because I think this releases creative energy. It is a way we strive for excellence and virtue, and we become productive to ourselves if we can take care of ourselves. And everybody has that responsibility. We all have different talents and we'll do different things. But I am also convinced that all of us, regardless of our talents and regardless of our monetary reward, I think the sense of satisfaction that we have is not related to the amount of dollars we end up with. It ends up with the satisfaction that we have taken care of ourselves, because there are a lot of people who have a lot of wealth and they aren't all that happy because they don't have this sense of satisfaction. That sense of satisfaction only can come from a free society that protects your freedom to run your life, be creative, and to assume responsibility for you and your family. This should be the goal. This is the way